Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, it's so good to see all of your wonderful faces, all of your smiles, all of your energy. This has been an exciting series. It's shorter than our other series, but it's nevertheless exciting. So I just want to review where we've gone, and then we'll keep moving forward. So in week 1, the title of our message was, Whose Truth Is It Anyway? And we really looked at this idea around truth. Many of us say, I'm living my truth, I'm following my truth, and we take an ownership around truth. But in that message, I wanted to kind of highlight the idea that many times our truth changes and evolves as we change and evolve. And we understand that there's more than one way to get to an answer. I use the mathematical concept. There's more than one way to get to the number 4. And so we're not going to criticize those people that are using addition versus those that are using multiplication or those that are using division. As long as we're all getting the 4. That's all that really matters. And so if you missed the message, you can go back to that. Last week, for Mother's Day, the topic was the womb of creation. And we looked at what is the purpose of a womb and how do we create understanding that we actually all possess a womb metaphysically and spiritually. The beautiful thing about the womb is the place where creation happens. It's a receptive place where ideas can happen and form without judgment, without criticism, without skepticism and ridicule. Many times powerful ideas come to us or a new thing to do, but immediately we let that voice of fear and doubt and worry just cancel the idea. The womb doesn't do that. And so we must understand that we need that. The womb is also a place of nourishment. It's a place of connection. And so thinking about our own lives and our own dreams and desires and purposes, our destiny, we want to make sure that we're also nurturing and holding those ideas in the womb. So as we move forward, and this is the last week, the Power of Myth, we have the raffle. For those who have your tickets, we have the raffle, and we will be raffling off a DVD and book version of the Power of Myth. And one of the most amazing things that has come out of the Power of Myth that kind of everybody recognizes is the familiar phrase, follow your bliss. Yes?
Yes.
You probably all heard that. And it's really the most famous line out of all the work that Joseph Campbell has done. He has a huge body of work, but we all know follow your bliss. Now that's beautiful. Follow your bliss has become sort of a pop culture phrase. It's on mugs, it's on a t-shirt. We have a follow your bliss magnet rather, on our refrigerator. I've seen it on postcards, and that's really nice. But what I found many times is when these spiritual ideas or these profound messages become sort of part of pop culture, they begin to lose their meaning. They begin to lose their zest. And what I found is that many people have equated follow your bliss with do what you love. And for that reason, it's become controversial. Frank, we were talking about that a few weeks ago, right? Because, this idea of do what you love, can you really do that? Because that sounds selfish. And is that what follow your bliss means? And I was reminded in January, there was a post that I read. It was an article on Slate that was talking about this mantra of do what you love. And this author was very much against this idea of do what you love. She writes this in the article: do what you love is a secret handshake of the privileged and a worldview that disguises its elitism as noble self-betterment. And what she argues is that only people of a certain status or stature can actually do what they love. But those who may be in a different socioeconomic background, if you only have a certain amount of education, you can't really do what you love, right? Or if your skills are limited, you can't do what you love. Or if you're poor and you just need to make ends meet, you can't do what you love. And that was her argument, right? She goes on to write that the most important recent evangelist of do what you love was the late Apple CEO, Steve Jobs. In his graduation speech to the Stanford University class of 2005, Jobs recounted the creation of Apple and inserted this reflection: you've got to find what you love. And this is as true for your work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Now, I actually think that's very powerful. But she uses this to say that this, as she says, Jobsian idea of do what you love has actually disserviced us, particularly because it creates separation. that those that are on the bottom rung socioeconomically actually aren't able to do that. And so it's actually just a way to push capitalism further, because the rich and the wealthy get to say do what you love because they do what they love. But then, Apple, for instance, has, factories in China where those people probably aren't doing what they love, but they're allowing jobs to do what he loves, right? And I came across another blog post on tinybuddha.com. And she's also speaking against this idea that the topic of the blog is 4 myths about doing what you love for work. And the 4 myths that she highlights are these, which should sound very familiar to you. The first myth, she says, is do what you love and the money will follow. She says that's a myth. She says leap and the net will appear is a myth. She says that do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life is a myth. And finally, she says anyone can decide at any time to do what they love. That's also a myth. And it's interesting to me. I remember reading the piece in Slate in January, and I wanted to either write a blog post or eventually do a message about it, because I think there's something that needs to be spoken to here. Like, on one level, it makes sense, this idea, when we look at it from a socio-political standpoint, that, right, well, how can someone who is a garbage collector, they don't love collecting garbage, and how can you tell them do what you love, And I get it that we live in a realm, and particularly in this country, where their class is very distinct, and there are people that are able to live a certain life and lifestyle based on their socioeconomic status that others simply aren't able to live. But what does that have to do with follow your bliss? I actually think that follow your bliss is a deeper understanding that unfortunately has been equated with this do what you love, that sometimes can be a selfish way of living. And so I want to dig a little deeper into that. And so today, what I'm offering to you, instead of saying do what you love, I'm saying take your dreams seriously. But what I think is, as we talk about that and we hear the arguments around why you can't do what you love or why follow your bliss is a problem, I think we have to look at context. Context is always important when we're talking about these things. Because when we look at these arguments, these are very heady arguments. They're very logical arguments. They're very reason-based arguments. But what I understand, if you understand the work of Campbell, the work of Joseph Campbell is very spiritual, right? It's coming from the other side, and so we have to look at it from that perspective in order to understand it with our reasoning mind. So first I want to look at what does follow your bliss mean, as he actually shared it, as it was actually shared in The Power of Men. What was he talking about? And so I want to share this conversation that happens between him and Bill Moyers. Now, Campbell says that it's characteristic of democracy that majority rule is understood as being effective, not only in politics, but also in thinking. In thinking, of course, the majority is always wrong. And I think that's important right there. Because I think that these ideas that we're reading in these other posts that saying that do what you love is not the right way, that you actually, most people would say you don't get to do what you like, you just work to earn money. That's the problem. That's the only thing you need to do. You need to pay your bills, you need to take care of your family. It doesn't matter if you like it, right? That's what the majority says. But what Campbell is offering us is that in thinking, and really when we're talking about spiritual ideas, the majority is always wrong. And the conversation continues. Moyer says, always wrong? And Campbell asks, have you ever read Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt? Not in a long time. Remember the last line? I have never done the thing that I wanted to in all my life. That is a man who never followed his bliss. Well, actually, I heard that line when I was teaching at Sarah Lawrence. Before I was married, I used to eat out in the restaurants of town for my lunch and dinners. Thursday night was the maid's night off in Bronxville, so that meant that many families were out in restaurants. One fine evening, I was in my favorite restaurant there, and at the next table, there was a father, a mother, and a scrawny boy about 12 years old. The father said to the boy, drink your tomato juice. And the boy said, I don't want to. Then the father said with a louder voice, drink your tomato juice. And the mother said, don't make him do what he doesn't want to do. Then the father looked at her and said, he can't go through life doing what he wants to do. If he does only what he wants to do, he'll be dead. Look at me. I've never done a thing I wanted to in all my life. And I thought, my God, there's Babbitt incarnate. That's the man who never followed his bliss. You may have a success in life, but then just think of it. What kind of life was it? What good was it? You've never done the thing you wanted to in all your life. I always tell my students, go where your body and soul want to go. When you have the feeling, then stay with it, and don't let anyone throw you off. Moyers asks, what happens when you follow your bliss? And Campbell says, you come to bliss. In the Middle Ages, a favorite image that occurs in many, many contexts is the wheel of fortune. There's the hub of the wheel, and there is the revolving rim of the wheel. For example, if you are attached to the rim of the wheel of fortune, you will be either going down or at the bottom coming up. But if you are at the hub, you are at the same place all the time. That is the sense of the marriage vow. I take you in health or sickness, in wealth or poverty, going up, going down. But I take you as my center, and you are my bliss. Not the wealth that you bring me, not the so-so prestige, but you. That is following your bliss. Now this sounds very different to me. If we're saying, or others are saying that follow your bliss equals do what you love, what I would argue is that what follow your bliss really means is do what you are. Yes. Very different. Yes, yes. And this idea of the wheel, life, I talk about this often, that life, things are going to happen, changes are going to happen, ebb and flow, good and bad, sickness and health, wealth or poverty, these things are going to happen. But following your bliss is about being in the center of the wheel, so you are not moved by the changes of the circle. You stay in the center. And so, if following your bliss means do what you are, then I would argue again that take your dreams seriously means take who you are seriously. Yes. And this shifts, I believe, how we even begin to measure success, because then it's not really about money. And so I would even say, in one of the blogs when she says that, do what you love and the money will follow is a myth, I would say that in a sense it is, because it's never really about the money. When you're doing what you love, if you're solely doing what you think you love so that you can become wealthy, you're not following your bliss. Because what's interesting about following your bliss, when you're doing what you are, you can't help but be what you are. Right? Whether the money is there or whether the money is not there, you still have to be who you are. Who you are in this moment, rich or poor, you're still going to be who you are. Right? Because your financial status actually doesn't tell us who you are. In a relationship or not in a relationship, you're still going to be who you are, because your marital status or relationship status doesn't tell you who you are. Yes, yes. And so then I was reminded of where Campbell goes further to talk about this idea of following your bliss. And the word bliss, he talks about where he actually came to this idea. It goes back to Sanskrit. The word for bliss in Sanskrit is ananda. And Campbell says this. He says, now I came to this idea of bliss because in Sanskrit, which is the great spiritual language of the world, there are three terms that represent the brink, the jumping off place to the ocean of transcendence. Sat, Chit, Ananda. The word Sat means being. Chit means consciousness, and Ananda means bliss or rapture. I thought, I don't know whether my consciousness is proper consciousness or not. I don't know whether what I know of my being is proper being or not, but I do know where my rapture is. So let me hang on to the rapture, and that will bring me both my consciousness and my being. I think it worked. And just for a moment, as we say take your dreams seriously, as we say take who you are seriously, as we say follow your bliss, as we say do what you are, what is the place of bliss for you? What is that place of rapture? You don't have to know it all. I don't have everything else figured out, but I know what just turns me on. No matter what. Whether I'm in a relationship or not, whether I have a whole lot of money or not, whether it's raining outside or whether it's sunny, what is that place within me that is rapturous, that is just full of joy no matter what? What is that place within me that keeps me in the center of the wheel? That's your bliss. And I love here that Campbell says that the word in Sanskrit represents the brink, the jumping off place to the ocean of transcendence. And this is what I was sitting with this week, because again, as I understood that really this mantra of follow your bliss must be understood spiritually, I recognize that it's a transcendent idea. It's something that's not about this world of form. It's not about this physical world. We talk here at CSC that the God experience is an experience that transcends the heart, mind, and soul of the world, that transcends material sense. It goes beyond just this physical thing. You can't put your hand on it, but you can feel it. The love that you feel in this room, you can't bottle it up, but you know it's real, right? That's the transcendent. And Campbell, when he talks about myth, he says that myth is the field of reference or metaphor that points back to the transcendent. That's why we still have wonderful stories, even in our movies. Our myths, I love all of the action hero movies, whether it's Superman or whether it's Spider-Man or X-Men, which comes out this coming weekend. I can't wait. But the thing I love about it, I believe that these are our modern myths. And why? Because if we go back to older stories like Star Wars or The Matrix, we see that same place where Neo had a crossroads, where he had to choose. Was he going to live just a regular life? He gets in trouble at work and they're like, okay, if you're late again, we're going to fire you. We see you living this other life, doing these other things, and he had to finally decide, do I want to live in my center? Because there's this thing that keeps gnawing at me, learning about Morpheus and Trinity and what this is all about and what is the Matrix. There was this question that was constantly gnawing at him. And he finally had to make a choice to move forward. He made a choice to follow his bliss. Wasn't always easy even after he made the choice, but there was something that kept him moving forward. Ultimately, he found that place of awakening. Ultimately, he found that place of enlightenment. Ultimately, he found that place of complete transcendence. And Campbell talks about this other piece that I think is important to look at this realm of transcendence. He talks about this mask of God. It's a beautiful statue in a temple on an island off of what was then called Bombay, and would now be known as Mumbai in India. And the way he describes it, you go into this cave, and everything is bright and lit outside. But once you go into the cave, it gets very dark, and you have to wait for your eyes to adjust. But once you get in there, you find this amazing, amazing statue. It's huge, and there are 3 faces. In the center is the face of God. And on the left and the right are 2 other faces. One side is the face of a male, and the other side is the face of a female. And Bill Moyers is asking him, what is this all about? And he says that the deeper meaning behind the statue, although it's beautiful and you may feel something and not know what it's all about, is that the center represents that transcendent place. But whenever you move from the center to the left or right, you've moved into duality. You've moved into this realm of male and female. You've moved into this realm of right and wrong. You've moved into this realm of up and down, of light and dark. But the key to following our bliss, again, is staying in the center of the hub of that wheel. And that mask is a beautiful representation of that. And it reminded me, even as we go to the Bible in the book of Philippians, attributed to the Apostle Paul. It's a very famous scripture that is misused. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Now, the way that scripture is used is, I'm a superhero. I can do anything because Christ strengthens me. And that's not what the verse was talking about. Paul was actually speaking to this transcendent metaphysical idea. Why? Because before that, Paul says, in any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well-fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and being in need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So what he's talking about, just as we talked about that wheel of going up and down, that sometimes life is up, sometimes life is down. Sometimes I'm hungry, sometimes I'm well fed, sometimes I have plenty, sometimes I'm in need. But I recognize that I can do all of these things because there is Christ within that strengthens me. I stay at the center. Yes. Just like the mask. I stay in the center. That is the truth of that verse. So when you use it in that context. When you see it, recognize that most people are misusing that verse. That's not what it doesn't mean I'm super and I'm strong. That's not what it means. It's a deeper transcendent idea. Because we recognize that life has its ebbs and flows. We recognize that things are going to happen. We recognize that transitions are going to happen. We recognize that certain doors are going to close. We recognize that new opportunities will come because of that. But I recognize that I can do it all. I can live through it all because there is something transcendent within me that strengthens me. Yes. That's what the meaning of that verse is. And again, it takes us right back to what we're talking about. Now, Campbell also says in The Power of Myth, here, he says that Heraclitus said that for God, all things are good and right and just. But for man, some things are right and others are not. When you are a man, you are in the field of time and decisions. One of the problems of life is to live with the realization of both terms. To say, I know the center, and I know that good and evil are simply temporal aberrations, and that, in God's view, there is no difference. This is the wisdom of following your bliss. So even as we say again, take your dreams seriously, take who you are seriously, do what you love. Many times I hear from many people, well, I don't really know what I love. I don't know what to do. If I knew what my purpose was, I would do it. But you know who you are. And I think many times why we struggle with knowing what our purpose is because we think there's some right or wrong thing to do. But what Campbell is saying here is that for God, all things are good and right. If you're in the center. That's the only thing you have to worry about. Are you aligned with the center, with what is absolutely true, with what is transcendent, with what can never be destroyed, with what can never be broken, with what is eternal and will always be eternal? I've said it many times, but it's important to know and remember. If we look in the book of Jeremiah, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you. This is in the voice of God. You're eternal. And that's that place that we must always move from. So we're not worried about if this is the right thing or if that's the wrong thing. I was reminded I was listening to something from Abraham Hicks recently. And Abraham Hicks says this, man has been wanting God to choose sides from the beginning of his conscious awareness that there is something more than he. But what God is saying is choose what you choose, regardless of what it is, and line up with it. Because you can be, you can do, you can have whatever you want. That's the absolute truth of life. Life is no respecter of persons. That's why we have kind and nice people that are rich, and we have mean and evil people that are rich. Right? That's why we have kind and nice people that seem to always find a relationship and a lover, and that's why we have so-called mean and evil people that can find a nice relationship. So it's never about the thing that you want. It's never about a right or wrong. You never have to take a test or line up or be some perfect being for that. The only thing you have to do is remember that it's already yours. Line up with it and know it to be true. So we say take your dreams seriously. I say follow your bliss. That when we're talking about taking your dreams seriously, taking who you are seriously, I'm really asking you to live from this transcendent idea. And so it's really not about what you do. Emily Cady says doing is secondary to being. I've shared here before that you're a human being, not a human doing. Wayne Dyer, right? It's very important to think about because we live in an age, in a realm, and particularly I think here as New Yorkers, because people are always doing things. We live here in a place where a lot of people are here to follow their dreams or to follow their bliss in some way. And you can find yourself, oh, well, I'm not doing all these things, or, I'm not getting these auditions, or I'm not working on my business plan, or I'm not doing that, I'm not doing the other. Action is overrated. I gotta say that. It's absolutely overrated. And the reason why I say that is because there's a difference between action because you think you're supposed to do something, busy for being busy, versus when you're inspired because you know who you are, and then you're taking action. And think about it in your own life. Think about the times when things worked out easily, when something just popped into your mind and you decided to follow it. And it seemed like everything just kind of flowed. Different people came out of nowhere, the money showed up. You didn't really have to work hard, you didn't have to sweat, you didn't have to hustle, you didn't have to grind, right? Things just worked out, right? But the make it happen idea, that's the hustle, that's the grind, right? And that's living in this logical reasoning mind and not recognizing the transcendent idea of follow your bliss. The other thing is we say take your dreams seriously, redefine your success, right? That success is beyond money. It's beyond the accolades, it's beyond fame, it's beyond the glory. Like that's not what success is. Because again, bliss is ananda. Bliss is that transcendent idea. Bliss is that place of rapture. Bliss is that place that turns you on. That's what bliss is. And then finally I say that don't do what you love, but do what you are. Because that's the easiest thing to do. You can only be who you are. I mean, I'm laughing because it's like, really, it's that simple? I just get to be me? I don't have to put on these airs. I don't have to act like I'm so busy or I have it all together. All I have to do is just be me. Like that's all was ever required. I mean, this was the wisdom in the story of the Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's amazing. Dorothy goes on this incredible journey through all of these twists and turns, only for Glinda to tell her, you have your shoes all the time. All you have to do, you could have, at the beginning of the story, you could have just clicked your heels. You would have been good. That's the simplicity. Just be who you are. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. You have everything you need. All of the equipment you need to do whatever you need to do is there, or it will be given to you easily and effortlessly. Right? You don't have to sell your soul for it. You don't have to go against what you believe to be true or your morals or any of that. You don't have to do any of that. You just get to be who you are. And so the beauty of life is the more we come in touch with who we are and really fall in love with who we are, that's the easier life becomes. Because really it's only us that we're sort of making the, I'm not thinking of the word here, but we're the ones that sort of step back and try to make apologies for who we are, right? Because we put on certain airs and certain masks. But the more that we stop apologizing for who we are, the more that we say, this is who I am, I'm beautiful, I'm amazing, I am as God created me, I'm eternal, I'm limitless, I'm unbounded, I'm free, I'm fearless, I'm courageous, then life says, yes, you are. And begins to show you that over and over again. Yes, you are. And begins to show you that over and over again. It opens the door and says, yes, you are. Come on in. Welcome to this brand new, brave new world. And so while I appreciate the critique from my sister in the earlier article speaking about the job-seeing worldview, again, I think what Steve Jobs had to say to that class in Stanford in 2005, that graduating class, is actually on point, completely on point, right? And so I actually want to end with some more words from my brother Steve Jobs. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. So I invite you to stand in this moment. This week we're going to be the crazy ones. We're choosing to be the crazy ones to say, I'm going to follow my bliss. Not in a place of selfishly doing what I love or a place of saying that, this is some elite idea that I can do in others, but recognizing that, no, I understand what bliss is. I understand that I'm not saying do what I love, I'm going to do what I am. That as I take my dreams seriously, I'm taking who I am seriously. And if you didn't know it, who you are is as God created you. Made in its likeness and image. You are a creator on the earth. You are a divine being, a holy being. And so to live as anything less than that is doing the world a disservice. And this is why you are here to change the world. You are here as a light to bring more light to the world. And God knows there's so many dark places on this earth that need light. Yes, yes? Yes. If you want to follow the news, if you want the news to inform you, don't let it put you into a place of fear or panic, but let it put you into a place of mobilization and says, oh my God, this world needs light. Yes. And I am a lighthouse. I must turn on my light. If you're going to use all of the things that are happening in the news, and there's a lot of things happening, use it as fuel to turn on your light, to turn up your wattage. Because you recognize that if you're seeing it, you recognize that if it's making you feel something, that means that it's calling for you to be the source of love, to be the source of strength, to change this world so that we're never talking about these stories again. Yes. And so in this moment, Mother, Father, God, I am grateful and thankful for us here, the crazy ones. Those that are here representing absolute genius. Those that are here tapped in and tuned in to the reality of what is true, of who and what we are, that we are lighthouses, that we are lights of the world. And so as we may see many dark places in the world, we recognize that that is just a call for love and a call for light. We are choosing today with a new understanding to follow our bliss. Not to just do what we love, but to do what we are. Not just to take our dreams seriously, not just to take our ideas or our desires seriously, but to take who we are seriously. And we affirm today that we are more than enough. We affirm today that we are equipped for whatever our purpose, desire, or destiny is. We affirm today that we are courageous. We affirm today that we are wise. We affirm today that we are genius. We affirm today that we are full of love. We affirm today that we are passionate. We affirm today that we are unlimited. We affirm today that we are unbounded. We affirm today that we are fearless. We affirm today that we are strong. We affirm today that we are love itself. It permeates our very being. And we recognize that we have a purpose and a destiny to be all of those things here on the earth, because the earth is calling for us to be those things. I am so grateful for each and every person here in this room and each and every person within the sound of my voice. For I know that they will continue to move through life from the center of the wheel. No longer moved by the ups and downs or the ebbs and flows of life. And we take on that mantra that yes, we can do all things through Christ, through the anointed that is within us, through the power that is within us, through the Christ consciousness that dwells within us. We can do it all. And so from that place of knowing the bliss and the peace and the rapture of living in the center, keeping our face on the center mask of God, no longer moving into the realm of right and wrong, of this or that, we recognize that we live from the center of life. And from the center of life is the bliss of life. From the center of life is that transcendent place of life. Oh, and as these beautiful beings choose to live from this place, what a world we shall create. I am grateful for the world that we will live in, because each and every one of these souls have said yes to themselves. Today we say yes to all that we are. We open our arms wide and we embrace ourselves as we are. For we know it is that easy. It is absolutely that easy. And so we lift up our voices today in love and with a yes by saying amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
So it is.